Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Opening Arguments here, episode 3, brought to you by Conduct Detrimental, your leader in sports law coverage. Well, it's March Madness season, and I couldn't be happier. The boys are back in town. A couple of fellows from the ACC are joining me today on today's episode, Mr. Mike Lawson, the Syracuse Orangeman, and Mr. Tarun Sharma, the Duke Blue Devil. Gentlemen, how are we?
Thanks for having me, Conlan, and I'm excited to rain buckets like Buddy Buckets. I'm not throwing punches, but I'll be throwing shots up.
You got to be careful there. You saw Mr. Boeheim had to be removed from contest on Friday. Wasn't allowed to play Coach K and the Duke Blue Devils after his seeing the game prior. But Tarun, doing well, bud. How are we?
I was better last week when Duke's defense wasn't abominable, but we're still dancing, so that's more than I can say.
That's right. Rutgers and Duke still dancing. 2 out of 3. We're shooting over 50%. That's fine. But let's move from the hardwood to the gridiron, fellas, and we'll start in the NFL. Deshaun Watson was deemed not guilty, was not charged criminally, rather, by a Texas grand jury on Friday. He will be eligible for the 2022 season, but for how many games? And that's where we'll start. Will Deshaun Watson be suspended from the NFL and over or under 4.5 games? Mike, to you.
Slam the under. Slam it. Under. Deshaun Watson, we've seen the last year has just been up and down for what's going to happen on any sort of punishment. He was not formally punished by the NFL, yet he didn't strap up the pads. He didn't put on pads. He didn't play a single game last year. That was definitely coming from the Houston Texans side. He was paid to not play. The Commissioner Goodell actually came out with a statement saying that there was not enough to put him on the exempt list, paid to not play, on the NFL Commissioner's exempt list. But we saw the grand jury come down saying that there was not enough to proceed forward with criminal charges, and he was not indicted. Granted, there is 22 cases against him, but we've seen in the precedent. I know that there's a 6 game that was put down on Ben Roethlisberger. That's the biggest one. However, it was then lowered to 4 games as well. We're going to see differences with Antonio Brown in his situation where he was given 8, yet that was for sexual assault as well as the throwing rocks.
And that's time. Mike, Tarun, to you.
Yeah, I think that this is more in the neighborhood of what Antonio Brown was kind of accused of with sexual misconduct. Like you mentioned, so he wasn't officially put on the exempt list by the commissioner, and he was paid. So to me, that says that no real punishment has been handed down at this point. And despite the lack of criminal charges, it hasn't taken criminal charges for the NFL to suspend players in the past. You brought up the Roethlisberger element of it. He was suspended of six games after allegations of sexual misconduct in a Georgia bar. And Goodell said at that time is that NFL players are held to this higher standard. And so that's why he was suspended for the 6 games. And he basically had to go and grovel at the Westchester airport to Goodell to get that winnowed down by a couple of games. The other factors being there that the Rooneys are very tight with the NFL. So I'm going over. I think that this is going to be 6 games. I could see 8 games like Brown, but 6 games for
over.
Sure.
That's it. Mike, 30 seconds. Rebuttal.
It's got to be under, though, because with the Roethlisberger situation, that was a 6 games initially, but it was lowered to 4 games for good behavior. I get the connections there. But these were 2 rape charges, 2 horrible accusations and allegations here. And I'm not downplaying what's happening with Deshaun Watson, but one of them he actually settled out of court. The other one was a similar situation where the DA chose not to go forward because there was insufficient evidence. So when you compare the Roethlisberger one, 4 games seems to be the perfect punishment that could be implemented because of that. Now,
Tarun, 30-second final.
I'm still seeing more than 4 games. I think that the fact that there's so many of these civil suits that are still out there, 22, that is a staggering number, and none of them have come close to being settled at this point. The thinking was last year, according to Mike Florio, that if Watson had settled these in order to facilitate a trade to the Dolphins, that the suspension would be around 6 games. Now, at that time, there was still the criminal charges hanging over his head. So even with those dealt with, what are we looking at? 5 games? I still hit the over.
Tarun, all right. Gentlemen, a nice, heated, debated first topic, but I have to go with Mike here. I don't see it. Obviously, with the bar for Roethlisberger being so low, I truly believe Deshaun Watson's on the field week 1 of next season. And he's definitely not going to be in Houston, but I don't see him being suspended for more than 4 games would be the max for me. So I go under. Mike Lawson, the point to you. All right. Fellas, let's stay now here on the gridiron. Calvin Ridley, Calvin was suspended for a full season last week by the NFL after it was announced that he had been caught gambling on NFL games. He had placed a series of wagers totaling the amount of $1,500 while he was away from the team back in November of this past year. Calvin Ridley suspended for a year. Is that a justifiable year-long suspension, Mike? Does that need to be lower?
It is absolutely justifiable, and it's a hardline rule. You gamble on sports, you're suspended. You know, I understand, and we're going to see the comparisons here. The NFL has such horrible past history with sexual abuse and violent crimes, which we just discussed with Deshaun Watson. But you got to talk about precedent here, right? We're not talking about what should be done or what shouldn't be done. It's what's the NFL going to do? We can bicker all day on what the NFL should do because their policies are so bad. But here's an instance where it is a hardline rule. There is one bet that's made, then you are punished here. And Calvin Ridley, the idiot, he goes on Twitter and he admits that he betted. If he didn't say anything, then there could have been some sort of investigation. He could have denied it. He could whatever. He goes on to Twitter and says it was only $1,500. I don't have a gambling problem. Whatever.
That's what I say too.
One of the bets was on the Falcons. This is 100% justifiable.
All right, there you go. 60 seconds, Taryn, to you.
Conlan, I think that this is absurd. Okay, you might look at I know that the NFL isn't great with precedent, and you might look at some of these past ones. I think Alex Karras suspended for the entire 63 season. Paul Hornung, same thing. Art Schlichter, big gambling problem. He was betting on basketball, suspended for the entire 83 season. That was before the NFL opened the door to gambling. Now it's all legal, and they're partnered with these companies. You've got Manning's in commercials with J.B. Smoove and Halle Berry. I think if we're to believe that we're all Caesars, that there's no reason why Calvin Ridley should be suffering a worse fate than people like Greg Hardy, who we know exactly what he was accused of and all of those heinous activities. He was suspended 10 games. It was reduced to 4. Adrian Peterson beat his child with a switch, 15 games. And Calvin Ridley's supposed to miss a full, 18 games now? Yeah. It's absurd to me that is what drives that punishment.
But again, you can't compare it to the violent crimes because the NFL doesn't have a hardline rule. This is a hardline rule. You gamble on games. It violates the integrity of the game. He bet on the Falcons. So that even just goes to show, even though he was away from the team, he knows who's going to play that game, who's not going to play that game, what's going to happen here. So it's a hardline rule. He 100% needs to be suspended. It's 1 year. He even said he's like, I'm gonna use this time to get better mentally and physically anyway. So who knows if he was even going to play this year either. So he should be suspended.
Taryn, final.
I think that the reason why he's being suspended in this case, and again, I don't argue with him being suspended. That's fine, but it's that a year is a ridiculous amount. And the reason that he's being suspended for a year is because it's messing with the NFL's money, and it's because he really wasn't with an NFL partner. So you're telling me that Hard Rock can have their name on the Miami Dolphins stadium, but it's not okay for Ridley to use the app? He's not betting against the teams. He was betting some ridiculous parlays anyway.
So it's Pete Rose.
All right, and that's it. No longer. Mike, you make good points. Obviously, compromising the integrity of the game. Big no, not good. The NFL certainly getting into the betting grounds and all that stuff. But Taryn, you're right. You cannot have a player being suspended for an entire year and guys with domestic violence cases continuously getting a third, half of those. So, Tarun Sharma, the point is yours. And we are now moving to our rubber match, which will be taking place in Major League Baseball. All right. And our final topic to round out episode 3 of Opening Arguments, brought to you by Conduct Detrimental, your leader in sports law coverage. Moving to the diamond now. Rejoice, baseball fans. Baseball is back. We thought there for a while looked pretty bleak, but we have resumed, and there will be a full 162-game season, even after that crow Manfred laughed in our faces a week ago. We nonsense is out the window. The season's back on. Tarun Sharma, lead us off. After the lockout, who's the winner, the owners or the players? You got 60 seconds.
Well, I think it would be hard not to argue that the owners won this. The basic system is still in place. That basic system has led to skyrocketing revenues and incredible growth in franchise values that not even the stock market can match, despite what the commissioner might tell you. So given that they weren't able to make the players make any inroads on revenue sharing, and the fact that they had to drop a grievance that they had outstanding over Manfred's unilateral implementation of the 60-game COVID season and the lost wages with that, I think that this is a massive win for the owners. But the biggest thing, they have this 45-day committee now. And so they're able to, on 45-day notice, change the rules of the game. And in addition to the revenue streams that they've unlocked, which I'll talk about in a second.
In addition to revenue streams, you'll have to come back to that. Mike Lawson, 60 for you.
The players won. They went into this with the goal of trying to get more money into the pockets of younger players. Now, it didn't come in the form that they probably wanted, but there's a $50 million pool after arbitration where it has the top players in WAR who finish at the end of the year get a piece of that $50 million arbitration pool. You've got the increase in the luxury tax. It went up from 210 to 230. Granted, I think they wanted 238, but 230, and by the end in 2026, it's up to 244. Now, everybody says this is basically a salary cap. It's a soft cap because the teams just huddle around that top and they don't want to pay the luxury tax. But the players won because they got younger players money faster. They have this arbitration pool. They have the increase in the minimum salary going up so it's $700,000 next year, and it's going to be by 2026 it'll be up $780,000. The players won. They got more money. That's what they wanted.
Tarun Sharma, 30 to you.
Yeah, so I agree that the CBT did go up, but they also added another tier. So this Cohen tax now exists. They have a hard cap basically on runaway spending, 80% on every dollar above that. That's a huge win for the owners. They have also got these ad patches that they're going to put on the uniforms. That's going to lead to more money. And so I think that if you look at it, the fact that they didn't have to tie CBT to any sort of revenue like any other cap, there's no salary floor. And I think all of that contributes to an owner win.
Mike Lawson, round us out. Final 30 seconds, episode 3.
There's no salary floor, but again, you're increasing the minimum salary. So $700,000 is going to be the minimum salary now. And what we're seeing now is we're even seeing more advocation for younger players in the minor leagues. We're seeing all that. That was before the CBA. So we already see the advocation coming forward. We have everything based on WAR. We've got the luxury tax, which basically forces teams to pay more. You're going to have to go up. I mean, obviously you have these monster contracts, but now there's more money at the bottom for the little guys. The average is rising, so we can actually get the average player salary over $1 million.
And the average player's salary ends us there. It was good. It was both sides making solid points there. Tarun Sharma, you're today's winner. I think for the owners to not have to each side compromise, but I think the owners compromised a lot less. The players definitely did get the little fish, a little bit of bigger piece of the pie. But with that being said, the owners don't get the drastic increases that the players wanted. So Tarun Sharma, your episode 3's winner. FaceTime is to you.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm really excited to be able to win. When I was a kid, I loved watching Around the Horn. I got a chance to go watch PTI with some friends when I was a kid. And I don't know if you remember, but Tony Reale used to do the stat boy kind of role at the end. And I love Tony Reale. I still do. And so we're sitting there and we watch Wilbon and Kornheiser. They do their thing. And then I look over and then Reale's just standing there and he looks over. He's like, and I giggled like a little schoolgirl. So for me to be able to do this,
I'm your Tony Reale awesome. Then essentially.
Yeah,
right. It's the same mutual feeling. I don't see a giggle, so I couldn't tell. Yeah, right. All right. And to round out episode 3, we're going to lead into our final segment. We introduced this last week on the show. Who is being charged with contempt of court? This week, it's the NCAA, as they yet bungled another huge scenario here where Bellarmine, the Knights, being ineligible for postseason play, even though they won the Atlantic Sun Conference tournament. NCAA, the Bellarmine Knights considered to be in the transition phase, moving from Division II to Division I. But they won. They should have got an auto bid to the tourney. Guys, I mean, is this just another misstep by the NCAA?
Yeah, I would say so. I feel bad for the players and the coach. They came and played at Cameron last year. Obviously, no fans in the stands, but they really played tough, and those kids showed a lot of heart. And they were back and forth with Duke in the first half, and obviously that wasn't a good Duke team. But I I think that kids play their entire 4 or 5 year careers without the opportunity to go to the dance, and so I'm. It's a shame that this is being taken away from them.
Mike, your final thoughts on Bellarmine?
Yeah, the NCAA created this rule to assist lower schools from transitioning from D3, D2 to up to D1. It's to protect them from not getting smacked right away. However, they had a very aggressive schedule. They were playing some big teams: Gonzaga, Duke,
UCLA at home. I mean, they play competitors. They play teams. They got 5 teams in the NCAA tournament that they played. Obviously, I don't mean to cut you off, but yeah, go ahead.
No. They played up, and they played unbelievable, and then they win the ASUN. So here's an example where there needs to be a caveat, because obviously if this is meant to aid some other schools, like there are other ineligible, there's other teams that are in this transition phase just as well as,
but they're not competing and they're not winning conference titles.
They're not competing, right? So there needs to be some sort of caveat. There are waivers, there are eligibility waivers. I'm sure that they can go to the NCAA, but it's just another procedural mumbo jumbo that you have to jump through hoops to get to the NCAA.
Yeah,
where there should be a caveat: if you're successful, if you clearly don't need this transition phase, then you should be able to go forward.
It seems every year when the NCAA gets its shining spotlight. Last year was the NIL, players potentially holding out, missing tournament games. Now this year, just another episode where the NCAA has absolutely bungled this scenario here. Obviously, we have on the graphic on the screen, Twitter had a little fun with the idea of Bellarmine being ineligible despite winning their conference. This is from official Ohio State DG in reply to John Rothstein's tweet. You can check it out right there. So a shame for those kids. They even actually have a video I'll play for you right here regarding what their thoughts on being ineligible.
Told that this rule applies to programs that are transitioning. But as far as we know, we've met every criteria that the NCAA and the ASUN have laid out in front of us, and we just won our conference tournament. So as far as we know, Bellarmine is not transitioning. We've arrived.
They have arrived. And with that, final quick thing. Tom Brady back. Guys, what do we think? Also, someone just bought his last touchdown ball at auction yesterday for a whopping $500+ grand. Hate to be that guy right now. Oh, man, that kid's college. That kid better get a scholarship. His dad just blew a lot of money on Tom Brady's 115th to last touchdown ball, because I still think he plays 2 more seasons. Guys, any final thoughts?
I hope that wire didn't go through. That's tough.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Mike, your finals.
Tom is back. Tampa Bay.
Yeah, do they have one more Super Bowl run left in them? The roster's still pretty good.
It's still a solid team, and it knocks off another location that Deshaun Watson can't get traded to.
That's true. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. All right, guys, that's Opening Arguments, Episode 3, brought to you by Conduct Detrimental, your leader in sports law coverage. Appreciate you guys joining me. March Madness this week. Enjoy yourselves. Be safe. For Conduct Detrimental, I'm Conlan Farrell.